Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarthy. In 1859, New York City became a legendary outlaw in the American Old West. He grew up in poverty, moving to the New Mexico Territory after his father's death and his mother's remarriage, orphaned by age 14. He turned to petty theft and later, more serious crimes to survive, known for his charm and wit. He earned a reputation as both a pleasant person, but also a cold-blooded killer. Billy's criminal career escalated during the Lincoln County War in New Mexico, which started in 1878, and this was a violent conflict between rival economic factions vying for control of local resources. He sided with a group called the Regulators, ARASE, seeking justice for the killing of a rancher. The conflict became more brutal as time went on, and Billy became infamous for his role in numerous shootouts. Historians attribute at least 8 to 12 killings. To Billy, though, some accounts are exaggerated by folklore. Billy specialized in cattle rustling, robbery, and gunfights, earning notoriety, or his necessity, including a daring escape from jail, where he killed 2 deputies despite being vilified by law enforcement. He was admired by some for his rebelliousness and survival skills. In a harsh environment, he was captured and sentenced to hang in 1881, but escaped once again before being tracked down and killed by Sheriff Pat Garrett in Fort Seward, New Mexico, on July 14, 1881. At the age of 21, Billy the Kid's life left a lasting impact on American culture, and his story inspired countless books, movies, and songs, shaping the romanticized view of the Wild West. Story 2. Charles Ponzi. Charles Ponzi was born on March 3, 1882 in Lugo, Italy, and he became one of history's most infamous con artists. Growing up in a modest family, Ponzi received an education at the University of Rome, but wasted opportunities with a lavish lifestyle in 1903. He immigrated to the United States seeking fortune, but soon fell into a life of fraud. Ponzi is best known for orchestrating the Ponzi scheme, a fraudulent investment operation. His scam revolved around exploiting the price differences in international postal reply coupons, which he claimed could yield enormous profits when exchanged across countries. In reality, Ponzi was not investing money but using funds from new investors to pay returns to earlier investors, creating the illusion of success. By 1920, Ponzi scheme had attracted tens of thousands of investors, promising returns of 50%. In 45 days, or 100% in 90 days at its peak, he collected approximately $15 million, which would be equivalent to over $200 million today. However, his operation collapsed under scrutiny, revealing no actual investment backing. His claims Pony defrauded an estimated 40,000 investors, and he was convicted of mail fraud in 1920, serving prison sentences in both the United States and Italy. He died as a poor man in 1949 in Brazil, with his impact being significant as his name became synonymous with pyramid-style financial fraud. The Ponzi scheme remains a well-known tale in finance, and his story highlights the dangers of greed and the vulnerabilities in unregulated investment systems. Story 3. Charles Lucky Lucano. Charles Lucky Lucano, born Salvatore Lucania on November 24, 1897 in Sicily, Italy, became one of the most influential figures in organized crime in the 20th century. His family immigrated to New York City when he was 9, settling in the poverty-stricken Lower East Side, struggling in school. Luciano gravitated towards street gangs and petty crime, eventually joining the 5 Points Gang, a notorious criminal organization. He earned the nickname Lucky after surviving a brutal gang tech, which left him scarred by the 1920s. He became a leading figure in bootlegging during Prohibition, partnering with figures like Meir Lansky and Buggy Siegel. His innovation was restructuring the mafia into a corporate-style organization, forming the National Crime Syndicate and the Commission, a governing body to mediate disputes and manage criminal enterprises across the United States. In 1931, he orchestrated the death of his boss, Joe Masseria, and rival Salvatore Moran, solidifying his power and marking the end of the Calamar War, a violent mafia conflict. He then modernized organized crime by focusing on illegal gambling, extortion, and narcotics while minimizing intergang warfare. In 1936, he was convicted of running a prostitution ring and sentenced to 30 to 50 years. However, during World War II, his connections helped United States naval intelligence secure New York ports, leading to him being released and deported to Italy in 1946, where he continued to influence organized crime globally until his death from a heart attack on January 26, 1962. Lucky Luciano reorganized the mafia into a national powerhouse, shaping the criminal underworld for decades, with him being viewed as one of the most influential figures in organized crime. Story 4. Mir Lansky. Mir Lansky was born on July 4, 1902 in Grodno, Russian Empire, which is now, and he became one of the most influential figures in organized crime. During the 20th century, his family immigrated to the United States in 1911, settling in New York City's Lower East Side. Growing up in poverty, Lansky showed intelligence and discipline qualities that later set him apart in the criminal underworld. Lansky began his criminal career with childhood friends Buggy Siegel and Lucky Luciano. Together, they formed alliances that would shape the foundation of organized crime in America. Lansky was instrumental in creating the National Crime Syndicate, and unlike many gangsters of his era, he avoided public attention and preferred to work behind the scenes, focusing on financial management and strategy. He specialized in illegal gambling, money laundering, bootlegging during Prohibition, and later expanded his operations internationally. Including in Cuba, Lanz's financial acumen earned him the nickname the mob's accountant, and he played a key role in building casinos and laundering criminal profits, though not directly tied to violent crimes. Lansky's operations were supported by violent enforcement carried out by associates. Il High avoided major criminal convictions despite multiple investigations, and was never definitively tied to killing anyone. He retired to Miami, but faced legal troubles in his later years, and he eventually died of lung cancer on January 15, 1983, leaving behind a legacy as a master organizer and being recognized as a figure that helped globalize the mafia's operations. Story 5. Al Capone. Al Capone, born Alonzo Gabriel Capone on January 17, 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, became one of America's most infamous gangsters, the son of Italian immigrants. Capone grew up in a rough neighborhood and dropped out of school at 14 after assaulting a teacher. He joined local street gangs, including the 5 Points Gang, where he learned the criminal trade and earned the nickname Scarface after being slashed in a bar fight. Capone moved to Chicago in the 1920s, working under mob boss Johnny Toro, before taking over his organization. In 1925, Capone built a criminal empire specializing in bootlegging, gambling, prostitution, and extortion during Prohibition, known as the Chicago Outfit. His organization controlled much of Chicago's illicit activity, generating millions in revenue and employing ruthless methods to eliminate competition. Capone is linked to several violent events, most notoriously the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, where 7 rival gang members were gunned down, while the exact number of killings ordered or committed by Capone is uncertain. He is believed to be responsible for dozens of deaths despite his violent reputation. Capone cultivated a public image as a benefactor, donating at charities and helping the poor. However, his reign ended in 1931 when he was convicted of tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison, released in 1939 due to health issues including syphilis-induced dementia. Capone lived in Florida until his death on January 25th. 1947, Al Capone is known for helping establish organized crime as a real threat in America, especially during Prohibition, and he is a major reason why the FBI was founded. His legacy continues on, especially through books, documentaries, and films. Story 6. John Dillinger. John Dillinger was born on June 22, 1903 in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he became one of America's most infamous criminals during the Great Depression, raised in a middle-class family. Dillinger experienced a strict and often punitive upbringing from his father, rebellious and prone to trouble. He dropped out of school and began associating with local delinquents. He joined the U.S. Navy, but that quickly ended in desertion, and he soon turned to crime. Dillinger initially served time in prison for a failed robbery attempt, during which he befriended hardened criminals who taught him how to commit crimes. Upon his release in 1933, he quickly escalated to leading a gang responsible for a string of daring bank robberies across the Midwest. Dillinger became notorious for his audacity, using cunning tactics, high-speed getaways, and an arsenal of stolen weapons. His gang's violent heist often resulted in fatalities, and Dillinger was linked to at least 10 deaths. Though the exact number of victims remains unclear, Dillinger's celebrity status grew due to his charisma in the public resentment of financial institutions during the Depression. Despite his violent methods, he was romanticized as a Robin Hood figure, and as criminal exploits embarrassed law enforcement, especially after several high-profile escapes from jail, including one using a wooden gun. His downfall came on July 22, 1934, when the FBI tracked him to Chicago. Dillinger was ambushed and killed outside the Biograph Theater and being betrayed by an informant. Story 7. Bonnie Parker. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, known as Bonnie and Clyde, were a criminal duo who became infamous during the Great Depression for their string of robberies, killings, and daring escapes. Bonnie was born on October 1, 1910, in Rowena, Texas, and grew up in poverty after her father's death. She was a bright student with dreams of becoming a writer or actress, and she married young, but became disillusioned with her life. Clyde, born on March 24, 1909, in Ellis County, Texas, also grew up poor. He turned to petty crime as a teenager, progressing to more serious offenses. The two met in 1930 and soon became inseparable, embarking on a violent crime spree across the central United States. They specialized in robbing banks, small businesses, and gas stations, often targeting rural areas. Their gang, sometimes called the Barrow Gang, included accomplices like Clyde's brother Buck Barrow and his wife Blanche. Their escapades were marked by frequent shootouts with law enforcement, leading to the deaths of at least 13 people, including 9 police officers. Bonnie and Clyde's ability to evade capture for years, combined with their romantic partnership, captured public fascination. Media coverage portrayed them as both dangerous criminals and tragic anti-heroes, and their crime spree ended on May 23, 1934, when they were ambushed and killed by law enforcement near Gibson, Louisiana. The ambush was brutal, with their car being filled with over 100 bullets. Bonnie and Clyde's legacy endures as symbols of rebellion against authority. During a time of economic hardship, their story has inspired countless films, books, and songs, cementing their place in American folklore. Story 8. Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger, born James Joseph Bulger Jr. on September 3, 1929 in Boston, Massachusetts, was a notorious American gangster who led the Winter Hill Gang, a powerful crime syndicate in South Boston during the late 20th century. Known for his brutality and ability to evade capture, Bulger became one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. He grew up in a working-class Irish-American neighborhood, and his early years were marked by petty crimes, leading him into a life of delinquency. By his teens, he was involved in theft and gang activity, eventually graduating to more severe offenses after serving time in Alcatraz and other prisons. Bulger returned to Boston, becoming a dominant figure in organized crime. His criminal enterprises included extortion, drug trafficking, loan sharking, and killings. Boger was also an FBI informant, using his position to eliminate rivals while avoiding prosecution, with this being a controversial relationship that later embarrassed the FBI. He is believed to be responsible for or connected to at least 19 deaths, although the full extent of his violence remains debated. Boger's dual life unraveled in the mid-1990s, where he fled Boston after being tipped off about an impending indictment. He remained a fugitive for 16 years, living under aliases until his arrest in 2011 in Santa Monica, California. In 2013, he was convicted of 31 counts, including involvement in killings, racketeering, and money laundering, being sentenced to life in prison. Boger's life ended violently on October 30th of 2018, where he was beaten to death by inmates at a West Virginia prison. His story highlights corruption with law enforcement and has inspired numerous books, films, and TV shows.